Hey guys, it's May and today is September the 13th. And what a fun day in the markets. My goodness. After yesterday's rally, I was like, I don't know if you remember from last show, I was just like, I don't trust this as much as I want to believe and all that stuff. This is nuts. And here today, we're seeing the market. I mean, you've got NASDAQ down almost 4%. At 5%, you actually do get a pause, so to speak. S&P, and they're all saying it's because of the inflation data. Do you know what that means? That means they have no idea why the market's down. That's actually what it means, because you can't have this type of inflation data and believe that that's what's taking the markets down. Somebody is unwinding a portfolio. I'm just going to share that very clearly. To me, that's what's going on here. Let me also show you why I feel that way. If you look at this, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was an actual index provider who was just trying to get gross down because of how widespread this is. I mean, this is literally every single thing in the market, with the exception of, and that's why I'm like afraid to be too happy, with the exception of the fertilizers. One area for which I have been consistently loud and aggressive about it. And then Albemarle. I mean, like, I almost feel like somehow, I mean, I'm just not going to take a victory lap because I'm scared. Like, I'm hiding in the exact places that are green somehow magically. And, you just got to take it where you can get it in life sometimes. But what I would say is that nothing really dramatically changed from yesterday to today to warrant this. And I want to tell you why and show you very clearly why. I think it's a little bit insane for people to get too excited on the CPI number. Now, if there's something else out there, I'm super okay with that, but you cannot give me an excuse like the CPI number is what's taking down the market. Now, if we go through the major market indices, NASDAQ down almost 4%. That's really aggressive. And I'm actually going to talk about Google today as my highlight for a later time. I actually took a little bit of exposure to Microsoft using options with the vol spike. I used put spreads to do it farther back, because I just don't trust this market and what's going on with it. I feel like there's a lot of gamesmanship and there's a lot of political reasons why you would want that gamesmanship. And as such, it just scares me to take too aggressive a stance in any given moment. At all moments, I'm trying to always take profits where it makes sense and where my expression is a little bit too tight, if you will. Yeah, it's a crazy market. Crude oil also down, but not down to 83, which it was down just a few days ago. You know how I feel about this. You just need to look at literally any other video on my YouTube channel. So there is that. Okay, so then when we look at this, CPI, we've got jobless claims, retail sales, and some additional data on Thursday. So that's why I'm not so quick to go in too aggressively today, because I actually think this retail sales number is going to be a bit controversial. And I want to show you why through the CPI data. Okay, here's CPI data that happened this month. Let me actually increase the size of this a bit. And you can see energy driven down aggressively. And I think where people are a little annoyed is that even though we've had this decline in the energy price, right, down 7, down 10, so really almost feeling like it's manipulated because nothing else is down. Nothing else is down. It doesn't make any sense in a lot of ways. And a lot of people will call me out on it. I think I had somebody try to call me out on it just the other day in a very aggressive, inappropriate way, but we'll just go with it. That's fine. But the fact is, we do still have a lot of unresolved issues where this is concerned. And if everything else is going up, including things like commodities, service, less energy, shelter, transportation, all these other things, then it's hard to be like, hey, the economy is slowing down, especially when everybody knows at this time of year, these numbers in particular, a little bit able to be manipulated. That's all I'm saying, a little bit able to be manipulated, not a lot, but a little bit. So realize that is a thing. The other piece of this that I thought very, very interesting, was that as far as energy services go, the utilities companies, they're not decreasing pricing. So they are definitely thinking through this a little bit differently than gas at the pump or something like that. So realize that. I think where people got very upset was with this food number up 0.8. And then if you look across everything, it really is energy commodities, specifically gasoline, okay, all types, but really for your car, you know, gasoline that's really driving it downwards. And then fuel oil, which is really more of a either something for the airlines to enjoy, or alternatively something that so the utility companies might be storing for the winter. That's down only 5.9. So you really are specifically manipulating one part of the energy complex there. That's kind of what I think maybe the nerds might be focused in on, is that that isn't somehow changing everything around. Now, remember that gasoline feeds in directly towards freight and transportation costs. So actually here, if UPS and FedEx get a little bit too weak, I'm going to be very interested. Because it seems to me that at least this quarter, which would be June, July, and August, they're getting a break, for lack of a better way to describe it. Because if in fact all these other numbers are correct, people were still doing stuff in the economy, and yet the shipping price went down in theory as far from a cost perspective, but we shall see. I'm going to be intrigued. So you'll probably see me reflect upon the land-based and even some of the air-based, I guess, because FedEx is very much so air and land in that regard. We'll talk about that further later this week. Food, though, I do want to highlight this, because the other big positions that you guys know I have, that I care about, I've accumulated every time they've done something quote unquote stupid in my mind, would be corn and wheat, soy to a lesser extent. I actually don't currently, I think I have any soy remaining, because I just wanted to lighten it all up. So I think I have corn and wheat, but soy is probably fine as well, because we do still have the issues as relates to the entirety of the oil complex. If you're going to do it by express it via an equity versus going to the futures market to do so, the three indices, oh man, I'm terrible pronouncing this ETF producer's name, because they're really not as common. But the tickers would be WEAT for wheat, corn for corn, and then for soybean, it's SOYB. And those would be your equities ways to get exposure to the the grain complex commodities. So there is that. But this is what I saw. And then I always take a look, because retail sales will be coming out Thursday, what actually happened within the non-food and energy components. And crazily enough, I mean, this is really strange. Apparel up 5%. I mean, you got to understand, that is a strange read, because it really does mean that people were out there buying stuff. You know, the stores were doing really well. Additionally, new vehicles up 10. The way that I would interpret this is some of those vehicles finally came off the lot because the semi chips finally got to them. That's what at least the semiconductors were saying. And so used cars as well, we're finally getting some flow through on parts, et cetera. But the other thing that could be taking the markets down today is this increasingly aggressive stance we're taking against China that absolutely drove the semis down. I've not, you know, NVIDIA, you know how I feel about that. I talked about the other day. I'm not negative that company, except to note that a lot of they definitely do take a hit from all of this China's news, not the least of which is because they keep getting letters on it, but also because, you know, you got to be careful. We haven't completely unwound our relationship in the semis pipeline with China and subsequently Taiwan. It's going to get worse before it gets better, given the way that the arrows are pointing right this minute. I'm a big fan of the semis at these valuations. I'm still scared. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to lie. And timing's a thing, because my money is really important to me. So if you have gigantic guts, I'll use that word, and then knock yourself out and get in here, because it is quite the opportunity. But if you are a little bit more scared and skittish, I think there's other things that you can consider. And so that brings me to today. I really want to start talking about some of these mega cap techs, because I know this call is like how clever can you be for calling any one of these 5 companies? You're just not that clever. It's like the majority of the index. So if the world just starts buying the indices, S&P and NASDAQ, you'll look like a rock star. So that's not what we're talking about here. What I do want to talk about is that these are, for the most part, names that you do ultimately want to buy and hold. But for some of them, I think there's going to be a little bit better and earlier opportunity or thought process to be in them versus others. Like if I'm to go on the quick, today I'm going to talk about Google. I think Google, Microsoft, even Tesla, when it gets weak, I'm somewhat constructive on. People have tried to get me to be less constructive on it because Elon's a special guy. I have a little Yorkie right now under the table touching me. Sorry, that really scared me for a second. You okay? Sorry. So Tesla, and then Apple, but Facebook, because of the nature of it, there is a video earlier that I'll link at the end of this that you should take a look at. I'm a little less constructive on Meta, but at the same time, I'm not willing to beat Meta up as aggressively as others on the street might be. But today we're going to talk about Google, and you know, if I had prepared it a little bit later, I probably would be talking about Microsoft first instead of Google, because I think Microsoft lends itself to the same thing. Now, interestingly enough, across all of these companies, FX, foreign exchange, is an issue, but it's a different sort of issue for different ones of these companies. All of them have Europe exposure. All of them have hedge. All of them do a series of things. Tesla's a little bit more linked to China because they absolutely do have that plant in China, and they absolutely do a set of activities in China. They make no bones about it. That is that. But the rest as well, and the other four do not have exposure to China large. I mean, Apple definitely does. Google does not. Meta is not in China. They're not allowed in China. So that is what it is. Okay, so let me just show you Google and why I like this it's a little controversial, but everyone needs to eventually, in my opinion, find a place within their lifetime to own each of these. They're not going anywhere, and they will ultimately make up and continue to make up huge swaths of the US economy, for lack of a better way. So if you're thinking long-term retirement, you do, with these relative to all others, have to think of them like buying a Chanel bag that you then have for like many decades and potentially pass on to your kids, that sort of thing. With Google, always try to get GOOGL, not GOOG. It just gives you your voting rights. They trade right on top of each other. You might as well get your voting rights. But right now, the beauty of that is if you look at the multiples, it's trading at 13 times EV to EBITDA, okay? And while some people may try to argue that you should use growth rate on this, I would just say this is very low. I'm going to show you some reasons why you just want to kind of own it somewhere around here. Now, the cheapest one in this group is Meta. And Meta, actually, the financials aren't as ugly as people would like to think. It's just that strategically, Meta has more wood to chop. And that is the easiest way to see that is if you just look at quarterly revenue growth and year-over-year revenue growth. Out of these four, Meta was the only one that wasn't able to put up a positive growth number. And that is part of the reason why it's spending so aggressively on R&D, which it should do. But in general, I want you to kind of see it because all of them have a bit of the similar dynamic. Here was Google. It wasn't a perfect quarter. Revenue up just shy of 13%. EPS down 12%. 3.7% of that came from foreign currency. So on a constant currency basis, it would have been only down 9%. Still not that exciting, but we are absolutely in the positive in the profit. That when something like that happens, you really need to know what happened, because you had top line growth of 13%. What happened that you didn't bring it down? And always we look at the cost breakout, because in these kind of inflection points, you can see a little clearly what it is exactly as the strategy. Okay, first of all, love to talk about gross margins as a reason why these mega caps are probably just fine. 56%, 50, just a very small haircut off of gross margins, because their business isn't really dependent on certain types of spend that are going to be impacted by inflation, that are going to be affected by inflation. I just realized, sorry. So gross margin wasn't it. What was it was R&D up 28% and sales and marketing up 25 and change percent, almost 26%. G&A, which is where you're going to see your labor costs, you're going to see all those other things. That wasn't the big problem. Okay. So basically what happened was they're looking left, they're looking right. They're seeing everybody else, by the way, increased R&D. They're Google, so they're going to increase R&D and keep R&D very aggressive no matter what, because it's the nature of how they've always behaved. And so I'm super cool with an increase of 28% in a year where you're not going to necessarily get credit for trying to show numbers in some particular way. I have no problem with that. So realize that that is one way of breaking it out. And then if you put that 28% back in, if you put that 2 billion back in, you actually have great growth. Same thing on sales and marketing. Now, some people with sales and marketing will say, hey, May, you can't do it like that. And that's fair. Okay, I'll give it to you because quite frankly, sales and marketing increase can also mean it's more expensive to do sales and marketing because you have to pay your salespeople more, or maybe this, that, and the other is happening on concessions to just get the deal done, that sort of thing. Or alternatively, you legit are marketing heavier to try to get the same amount of business. That's true. So we'd have to really kind of see how sales and marketing goes going forward to really make a call there. But R&D is usually pretty unambiguous. They are investing in growth in the future. So now let's look at the revenue breakout so you can kind of see it a little bit more cleanly to get the story down. When we look at this, Google Services is the traditional business that we all know and love. And within Google Services is Google Search. And then they do break ads specifically in YouTube apart. Now, we all know that YouTube, if you Google search anything, you're going to get a bunch of YouTube items that come up. So just realize this is just pure ad revenue coming from YouTube, separated from any ad revenue that would have been coming from the search piece of the engine. That's up about 5%. You can see 340 over 700, that 340 increase, it's about 5%. Trust the Asian girl on the math. So and then Google Network's actually a little bit higher, so around 10, but Google Search is actually doing just fine, up 13. And then, so on the composite, up 10% year over year is the traditional business. It gives you a sense for why the R&D is constantly a thing that they're trying to do. Within R&D, the cloud business is doing fantastically on growth. We are seeing down below, hopefully this isn't too blurry, but you are seeing the cloud business is still operating a loss. Guess what? We don't care because that's true of Amazon as well as some other places. So that just is a function of the fact that the build out on the cloud business is continuing across every single vendor that does that business. Okay. And so that's actually a deal that's going on in operating income. And then we can see that the bets, Google bets, if you will, other bets, these are 1001 very cool businesses that you should absolutely check out. Everything from self-driving vehicles, different types of technologies associated with that, to different types of technologies associated with power. I mean, it's really everything under the sun. So it's kind of fun sometimes to just see what those pieces of Google are. You can see that I'm in Tampa. Hopefully you guys aren't really hearing the thunder as aggressively as I am, but we don't get, you grow up in Florida, you don't care. Oh, sweetie. I'm sorry about that, things like thunder. And yeah, so then, sorry, this Yorkie is so adorable. I think he wants to say hi to the camera. I'll have to pick him up after we finish questions. But last couple of things that are happening here. Geography, 45% of their revenue is international, which to me, given that they only had a 3.7% FX is pretty good. Note that they do hedge, that helped them a bit, but realize that the exchange rate FX issue is about 2.6 billion. And so you really do have to hedge quite a bit. And then cash flow is just fine. And one of the items that took away from cash flow is actually income tax. And so all in all, that's one thing to note. But the reason why we always like Google at 13 times is it may drop a little bit more. So really, really don't go too aggressively in it. If you're using options, just try to get exposure in a way that's farther back. For me, I'm going to sell some vol on it. So I'll probably do put spreads somewhere farther back and just go ahead and collect the vol premium on short dated options. But that's kind of just my style. I wouldn't recommend that to everybody. But the last thing I really want to show is the amount of cash they have. So remember, this is US dollar cash. Okay. So this is $124 billion. Just so you know, you can look at the other parts of the balance sheet, but if they paid off all their debt, they would still have 67 billion or something, which is bigger than the largest small cap company or the largest large cap, the smallest large cap company in the S&P 500. So they can buy a full on company if they needed to at any point. It would be nothing for them. And with that, I'm going to pick up this Yorkie because I think he's afraid of the lightning, and I'll take any questions. How's it going? Hey, sweetie, are you okay? Do you want to come on my lap? Hold on. Aw. Here, you can say hi, say hello. Hopefully Annie didn't tell me. He's like very scared. He's like grabbing my legs the entire time.
All right, what's his name?
This one, Yorkie, this is Leo. Leo, here, wait, we'll do it like this.
Leo.
Hi, Leo. Oh. He's shaking. I can see he's a little scared.
Oh,
Any
we'll buy
questions?
Chewy stock.
Buy Chewy? Oh, for the exactly. We are fans of Chewy in this household. I'm at my friend's house in Florida.
You inflation is once prices are up, they tend to stay up. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we might get
Except for gasoline.
we might get a little bit of a situation where I think food in particular is the one area where that can sometimes be not true, especially when you have such aggressive inflation. But in this case, it's going to take a while before some of the food prices come down, especially on grain. And I think for every prudent person that might be just watching this because they're interested in their own grocery bill, so to speak, when you can get good deals, you should go ahead and take them because, we've talked more than once about the fact that the grain complex affects literally everything else, including livestock, et cetera. Oh, honey, are you okay? Poor thing. Yeah, so that's one thing. With apparel, what's really holding up inflation prices right now? I mean, because this particular inflation is being driven by agriculture right this minute, it's going to affect so many things because you got to think cloth is made out of a certain amount of things. The oil complex is going to drive higher prices for a bit across anything made that's synthetic. So synthetic materials and natural materials are all going to struggle a bit in this environment, which means apparel will go up. Oil prices going down might help some of the flights a bit. So it might help the airline industries a bit. You could see those prices start to moderate just a touch. The real challenge is, and the real reason why I think the Fed has been so aggressive is because they have to get this labor price down. If they can keep the labor price from continuing to rise so aggressively, then we have a shot at actually having some modulated prices probably in the next year or so. It'll still take a little bit of time. You okay, honey?
So they would, to do that, they would have to curb hiring, right?
Which is what they're trying to do with this inflation. They're trying to get people to just calm down a little bit on hiring. Yeah.
Got it.
So
Okay.
it's possible. It's a little bit funky because I think that when the VIX got weak, like we were talking about, I think off camera last couple of days. I think when the VIX, I'm hedging using UVXY because I'm a little bit slower dated, but I think it corresponded to the VIX get down to like 22 or 21 or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, 21, 22. So I have to do a video just on the idea of uncertainty, but right now we really don't know. So the VIX as it closes in on 20 is too low in my opinion, because, it's really like, how do I say this? The US economy is a lot stronger than people want to give it credit for. And there is an absolute need from the Fed to do the best it can until production comes up on food and energy. Because here's the thing, part of what's driving higher labor costs is the fact that it's just costing people more in rent, it's costing people more in everything. And so if we can just kind of get a little bit of a break on labor, they're really trying to very closely navigate a soft landing. And now, whereas part of that soft landing might have been imports coming in from certain nations, specifically China, that looks like it's not going to happen, but we don't know because we can't tell, given that it's an election year, what the heck is actually going on with our Chinese foreign policy, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of conjecture. I know there's a lot of voices there. He wants to be on camera, this one, but that's kind of what's going on. Oh, my poor thing. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Any other questions? I mean, on a day like today, I think if there's like, it kind of depends how you came into it. I wouldn't be surprised if we find that someone was unwinding a portfolio by tomorrow. Because this is just so fierce.
You think it's overdone? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so if NASDAQ being like Google down 4, Microsoft down 4, just because of what? Because the chips aren't going to come from China? Do they think that's going to somehow delay growth? I'm not quite sure what is implied by that. Do you know what I mean? What exactly, do they think that Google doesn't really even sell in China, nor does Meta. I mean, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of Meta, at the same time, they have legitimately no exposure to China because China keeps kicking them out. Do you know what I'm saying? And Apple, I could kind of see if they're worried about chip sales within China or something, like maybe, but like Microsoft doesn't deserve, like it's just a little bit aggressive. And then if you really were trying to short China, Tesla would be the one that would be down the most out of big cap. It's only down 3.75, but in fairness, it has a much stronger financial position. And then the other thing that just I think is a little silliest is that the Chinese stocks aren't necessarily down aggressively off of this. Like what's that all about? And then, so that's why I'm thinking if someone's unwinding, it makes more sense. Or if,
you also get momentum traders.
You could get momentum traders, that's for sure. And it's weird. And then it's so rare that like the entire S&P 500, with the exception of like single digit number of names, is green. That's insane. Usually at least there's some sector rotation, but there's none here.
Great call on fertilizer. You've been in that a while.
I know, but it's just like, I don't take victory laps with the entire market's red. I feel like that's a superstition for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's not luck though. You analyzed it.
I did. I mean, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other things that you're focused on or looking at?
Not really. I mean, we came in hedge, so again,
We're long the market, but we're always looking for a place to hedge. But
Yeah. This is the days when the prudence and discipline of hedging your portfolio is kind of important.
Right.
Yeah. All right, then. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Leo wants to say goodbye. There you go. Bye.